Well, it's been partially settled. That's the news today about the bombshell lawsuit filed just 2 weeks ago by a former San Antonio Spurs sports psychologist.
She accused not only Primo of inappropriate behavior, but also the NBA team of failing to take action before then dismissing her.
Now, a few weeks ago, we dropped a huge video on a top NBA draft pick throwing his life away in the worst way possible, aka Josh Primo. And surprisingly, that was one of our better performing videos of the year. So as a result, clearly that conveys to me that you guys want an update on this situation, because we do have an update on this situation. And the update kind of gives me closure on everything except for one little detail. What's going to be the future of this young man? So I'll tell you how we got there. I'll tell you where we're going. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, because this video probably will get demonetized because of the contents of this video and the reason why Josh Primo got in trouble to begin with. And if you want to further support the channel, make sure you check out our channel memberships program. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The San Antonio Spurs are one of the most storied franchises in NBA history, and it's kind of impressive because I don't want to say that they're necessarily in a small market, but you have to admit the more dominant market in Texas is typically Dallas, then it's Houston, then probably San Antonio. As a result, you don't necessarily see San Antonio swinging on huge free agents. You don't see them going after players like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving or LeBron James. They've established a knack for being able to develop their homegrown talent phenomenally well. A great example of this is Tim Duncan. When they selected him with the #1 overall pick, they were able to immediately trend towards contention and eventually became a dynasty as a result of their abilities to develop Tim Duncan and also develop some late draft picks in Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, especially Manu Ginobili. But in the latter part of the dynasty, you saw the San Antonio Spurs doing phenomenal work in developing another prospect that without a doubt had star potential, but definitely needs some work on his jumper in addition to some further development in his offensive game. So the San Antonio Spurs were able to actually achieve this with Kawhi Leonard. They were able to select him and they were able to develop him, and although he was supposed to be the face of the Spurs past the Tim Duncan era, and that didn't ultimately work out because of one of the strangest rivalries of all time, the San Antonio Spurs track record for player development just speaks for itself. I mean, more recently, you saw them develop players like DeJounte Murray. Now it looks like they're trying to develop Keldon Johnson, and a player that was without a doubt next in line to get the same exact type of treatment was a player by the name of Josh Primo. Now, Josh Primo was the youngest player to be selected in the 2021 NBA draft when he was selected 12th overall to the San Antonio Spurs. And Woj himself says that his on-court development absolutely had the organization excited about his NBA future, which is really strange because a couple months ago, the San Antonio Spurs accepted Josh Primo's team option, meaning that they committed to having him on the team for another 2 years. It makes a lot of sense. He's a very young guy at this point, and although his game seemed relatively raw, it definitely seemed like he had potential for the future, which is why a lot of us were so surprised when we found out that the San Antonio Spurs actually were going to waive Josh Primo. All RC Buford had to say is, it is our hope that in the long run, this decision will serve the best interest of both the organization and Joshua. Now, this caught everyone by surprise. I mean, I don't care how big of a draft bust any player is, you typically give him more than 1 year, which is why this was so shocking. You never cut a lottery pick after one season. As a matter of fact, I can't even think of a single player that was a lottery pick that was cut after a season. I mean, maybe Thomas Robinson of the 2012 NBA draft, but he was traded in the middle of his first season. He wasn't cut. So this was very surprising. So all Josh Primo had to say about the situation at the time is, I know that you are all surprised by today's announcement. I've been seeking help to deal with the previous trauma I suffered and will now take this time to focus on my mental health treatment more fully. I hope to be able to discuss these issues in the future so I help others who have suffered in a similar way, and I appreciate privacy at this time. So at that point, all we knew is Josh Primo was dealing with some mental demons, and it it was so significant that the Spurs decided to cut him. We then found out the reason why the Spurs cut him. Apparently and allegedly, Josh Primo exposed himself to women on multiple occasions. That's when the story got significantly more interesting. The San Antonio Spurs would cut him, and the situation was so severe that despite there being multiple teams that would happily take on a player like Josh Primo and hope to develop him, he cleared waivers and he became a free agent. He's still a free agent now, by the way, and we're going to get to that in just a second. Now, Josh Primo's attorney at the time claimed that Primo suffered a lifetime of trauma and challenges and is being victimized by his former team-appointed sports psychologist who is playing to ugly stereotypes and racially charged fears for her own financial benefit. In an act of betrayal against her young client, Dr. Cawthon, who is 40 years old, falsely claims that Josh Primo exposed himself to her during the course of her numerous therapy sessions. Dr. Cawthon's allegations are either a complete fabrication, a gross embellishment, or utter fantasy. Josh Primo never intentionally exposed himself to her or anyone else and was not even aware that his private parts were visible outside of his workout shorts. What makes the allegations even less credible is that Dr. Cawthon never informed her patient of the purported exposure. Dr. Cawthon was Mr. Primo's mental health support provider and confidant, a therapist who Mr. Primo trusted. She is much older than Mr. Primo with many years of experience as a sports psychologist. It is baffling why she did not bother to tell her patient that his private parts were visible underneath his shorts. Josh Primo is at the beginning of a very promising career and has been devastated by these false allegations and released by the Spurs. He is in the process of seeking treatment to deal with the trauma inflicted on him by Dr. Cawthon's misleading allegations, in addition to the previous trauma he suffered as a child. He looks forward to clearing his name and to moving forward with his NBA career. So the unfortunate part of this is, no matter what the result of this is, it still completely sabotaged Josh Primo's career. I mean, whether these allegations are true or not, whether Josh Primo did something horrible or not, his career has been ruined. Now, at the same time, there's some troubling stuff about this, because apparently the Spurs were made aware of this misconduct and they ignored it for quite some time before they inevitably waived him. Shams Charania even said that the former sports psychologist Hillary Cawthon has sued the Spurs and Josh Primo and is filing a criminal complaint over alleged incidents involving indecent exposure by Primo, alleging that Primo exposed himself 9 times to her beginning in December 2021 and that the franchise failed to act. The beautiful part of this is the fact that, oh my God, it's literally the only lawyer that ever represents any plaintiff in this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Busby, the same guy that is representing Alvin Kamara's plaintiff, the same guy that represented a decent amount of Deshaun Watson's accusers, is now representing Hillary Cawthon. Now, Busby claims that Hillary Cawthon lost her dream job because the Spurs ignored her repeated reports of indecent exposure on the part of Primo. She also gave this chilling speech in regards to the situation.
I'm disheartened to be standing here sharing the events of my story, but I'm also very humbled and honored to have the place to share words that others may have not been able to. I'm a clinical sports psychologist. I'm a mother of 4 wonderful daughters, and I am a victim. The organization I worked for has failed me. I spoke up, I asked for help, I gave options. My voice and my feelings, my actionable items were silenced. Due to their inaction and protection of their assets, other individuals were impacted. And for that, I am truly sorry. It took the Spurs 10 months to do the right thing. That's too long.
And to be honest, man, I see both sides of this situation, and I just always approach this from the side that, hey, this woman might be trying to make a money grab, but at the same time, I approach it as, hey, this woman may have had really horrific injustice placed upon her. Regardless, she has to take a gigantic risk in order to do what she is doing. So you should keep that in mind. This situation is just terrible all around because Dr. Hillary Cawthon loses her job. Josh Primo loses his job. There's like no winners in this story at all whatsoever, but we do have an update on this entire situation. And in addition to this update, we even got word from what Greg Popovich, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, thought about the situation. So Pop said that I understand your desire to get as many details as you can, but as you know, this is in the hands of lawyers now, so I can't go there, and I'm not going to go there. It's up to them. They'll talk about it, argue about it, and go back and forth. That's what they do. So while that's going on, I can't talk about the details. details. What I will say is that I will stand by the statement that came out yesterday by the Spurs organization. I would only add that anybody that has observed the Spurs over a very long period of time knows that an accusation like this would be taken very seriously, without any doubt whatsoever. The Spurs organization would be on top of it. I'm confident that the men and women on the managerial staff that dealt and are dealing with this did so purposefully, promptly, and did it with the utmost care for everyone concerned. The accuser, the accused, the people in the organization, to make sure that everyone still feels comfortable and safe, and I just leave my comments at that. The only thing I would say to fans is to consider the statement I just made about how we've handled things over many years. As far as the details, I think they know intellectually, like we all do, that it's in the hands of the lawyers and we can't say anything. That pretty much cuts everything off. I would imagine over time that details are going to come out. They always do. Everybody just has to wait for that. So now we have an update on the whole situation. And I apologize if the recap was a little drawn out, guys. I make my videos under the assumption that this is the first time you're hearing about anything, and there was just way too many important parts of the story to ignore. If you want additional details, we have a part 1. We'll leave at the end screen so you can get caught up with it. The most recent news we got from this is coming to us from Tim McMahon, where Hillary Cawthon agreed to settle the lawsuit with the San Antonio Spurs and Josh Primo. Originally, the rumor was that it was just the San Antonio Spurs, but no, it's actually the Spurs and Josh Primo. So Tim McMahon says this: a former clinical psychologist for the San Antonio Spurs has agreed to settle a lawsuit filed against the franchise and Joshua Primo, the 2021 lottery pick released by the team last month after he was accused of repeated acts of indecent exposure. Honestly, man, I just can't get over this. Like, whether it was intentional or not, it's a really sad way to piss away a career. I mean, if it was intentional, especially, the fact that he just couldn't keep it in his pants completely ruined everything that this man worked for. And if it was unintentional, it's even more unfortunate if you ask me. Now, Tony Busby says that the parties have agreed to resolve this matter. The entire case is over and we have no further comment. So this was brought to our attention yesterday. So my question is, if that's the case, what's gonna happen with Josh Primo? I mean, he is still a free agent to this day. I don't necessarily know if we could expect the San Antonio Spurs to bring him back, and I doubt that the San Antonio Spurs are also going to be bringing back the psychologist that went through this trauma. I mean, I highly doubt that would happen. I highly doubt she would even want to take a position like that. Now, my question is, what's going to be next for both of these individuals? The psychologist, I'm assuming, is probably not going to see work in sports psychology anymore and probably change to a different section of psychology. That's just my guess, because it's a really part of our reality, guys. If this is on someone's track record, unfortunately, what some organizations may think is,
oh, this woman accused a very promising young NBA player of sexual misconduct. What if she does the same thing here? What if there's a pattern?
which I think is a really way to look at it, but it's unfortunate. Some organizations would view her as a risk. Why would you hire the person that has a misconduct case in her history when you could hire someone that doesn't? As for Josh Primo, his situation is a little interesting as well, because originally he was placed in this great position to really develop as a basketball player. I mean, you're talking about a situation where he could have eventually signed a contract for over $100 million like Kawhi Leonard did and like DeJounte Murray did recently. Even if it meant it would probably be with a different team, the Spurs are a world-class organization whenever it comes to talent development. And unfortunately, Josh Primo is going to miss out on this. Whether it was because he actually intentionally took off his pants, which would be a horrific reason to piss away this opportunity, or if it was unintentional, like he was wearing really baggy shorts or whatever, which would be even more tragic if you ask me. Everyone involved in this situation is a loser. Hillary Cawthon loses her dream job. Josh Primo loses an opportunity at generational wealth. And it looks like his career, at least at the time of this video, is not continuing. No team is taking him on. All of the teams that are bottoming out that could use a talent like him or want to invest in a project like him are not investing in a project like him. So maybe this fate changes in a couple weeks, or maybe he's just going to be blacklisted from the NBA. I'm really unsure. At the same time, I'd like to think that here's a really young kid that made a horrific mistake. When I was his age, I didn't make these types of mistakes, but I've made mistakes, and I feel like individuals that make these types of mistakes should be given the opportunity to grow and should be given an opportunity to rehabilitate themselves. And it seems like Josh Primo is very locked in on trying to rehabilitate himself, at least mentally. He's acknowledged the fact that he's had some mental struggles and he is going to be devoting some time towards that. And maybe this is another thing he needs to rehabilitate as well. It's really difficult to say for sure because I'm going based off of both scenarios, whether it actually happened or it didn't. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this, man. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.